I've had the great privilege to design and develop the project over the last 4 or 5 years to submit the planning application, which we're submitting today, to bring our existing Northern Runway into routine use. We first started it back in 2018 when we developed a draft master plan. That got finalised in 2019, and then today is the culmination of all of the studies that we need to undertake in order to finalise the planning application and submit it to the Planning Inspectorate.
And what, since 2021, when you first sort of started the proper consultation, what's changed within your plans over the last 2 years? What have you learned?
So we've done a couple of consultations. We had a significant consultation in autumn of 2021 where we laid down our original proposals, and we got about 6,500 comments and individual responses to that consultation. And as a result, we took on board the feedback, so we made some significant changes to the road layouts. So for the access to the south terminal and the access to the north terminal and to what we call the Long Bridge roundabout, we listened to the residents and their concerns, and we made some significant changes, and we consulted on those again in the summer of 2022. Following that consultation, we've now been able to finalise our proposals.
And can you explain what the process is now once it's with the Inspectorate?
So today culminates in the submission of the planning application to the Inspectorate. We now go into about a month-long period where the Inspectorate decide whether to accept our application, and if they decide to accept it, we then start what we call the examination process. Now, the formal examinations generally take the form of hearings. They will begin towards the end of this year, early next year, and that examination phase lasts for 6 months. After that, the planning inspectors take all of the evidence they've heard, and they have 3 months in which to complete a report which provides a recommendation to the Secretary of State. And then the Secretary of State has a further 3 months in order to make a final decision on the project. So we expect that to be in the region of the end of 2024.
Okay, and so if that all goes to plan, when are you expecting work to start?
So we could see, with it all going well, and we get approval at the end of 2024, we could see work start in 2025. There's about a 4-year construction programme. A lot of our construction work on the airfield needs to be undertaken at night, which is what we routinely do today. So we believe the Northern Runway could be operational by the end of this decade.
Okay, wow. And obviously within the process you've got environmental mitigation, and you've got a legally binding environmental commitments. There are campaign groups that say they will still fight this and can't believe, they say that there's not any realistic mitigation for the environmental impact for the extra flights, footfall, etc. How do you answer that, and what have you done to mitigate those worries?
So what the examination process entails is for everybody to have their view on the project, whether you're a business, local business, or whether you're employed by the airport and you support our proposals, or whether you're a campaign group that is worried about the environmental impacts. The 6 months of the examination phase is your opportunity to put your views forward to the independent Planning Inspectorate. Now, we know that the economic benefits of this project are significant. 14,000 additional jobs in the local region, £1 billion a year going into being generated through wages and spend in the area. So all of these benefits are huge and very important for our region. But we know and we fully acknowledge that an airport does bring environmental impacts as well. And what we need to do, and what we have done in our application, is we've assessed those environmental impacts and then developed mitigation strategies to limit and, where possible, reduce those impacts. So, for instance, on noise, we put in place a cap on the number of movements for the airport. We've doubled the number of properties that would be eligible for noise insulation, and for the first time we would be introducing a noise envelope which will guarantee that in the future noise levels will be no greater than they were at our peak in 2019. So we believe that insulating properties from noise is the right thing to do. We have an existing scheme which applies to roughly about 2,000 households, but we know that it's a scheme that the take-up is very good, and so we believe it's the right thing to do to extend that scheme so more properties are eligible, and they'll be eligible for things like double glazing or acoustic ventilation, so that we protect them as much as possible in their dwellings from the noise impacts from aircraft.
Yeah, and once it's all given the go-ahead and it's all done, I mean, how much does it secure the legacy for Gatwick for future generations?
Well, I really hope that this is the future of the airport. I think we all recognise how important the airport is for our local area and for our local residents. We have a huge number of local residents that rely on the airport for their jobs. We have a huge number of local businesses that rely on the airport to import and export goods, but also we spend about £100 million a year within the local supply chain. So we know that we're a really important economic asset for the region, and what this does is help secure that asset for the long-term future.
And I know this has sort of been all-consuming. What next for you? What do you work on next while the Inspectorate is doing their thing?
So one of my roles is to obviously present the case to the through the examination. So I'll be kept very busy over the next year, making sure that people have the right information. It's all laid out in our documents, and what we want to do is to make sure that people have the information so that they can make an informed decision. It's a piece of work that's been put together over 4 years. It's really important that people read the documents and come to make their own minds up about the scheme. We hope that we've made the case very strongly in favour of the economic benefits of the project. But I'll have to take that through and ultimately present the case to the Planning Inspectorate, and then I'll wait for the decision from the Secretary of State.